Can we ask what might be some of the House Republican priorities that are waiting now that the budget is out of the way and we've got 2 days of legislating left?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're left with a lot of small bills. I think we managed to get a lot of stuff done yesterday. So the focus right now is school construction and making sure the bonding bill gets passed. And then there's smaller initiatives if individuals want to push, I think we would support.
And could you put the sort of the budget vote in context? I mean, you told us last night there would be substantial support. There was among your caucus, and last time this happened was 2 years ago. But the Democrats and Governor Lamont had to carve out the highway user tax, the mileage tax on the heavy trucks to get Republican votes that time.
Yeah, this was a different process. I think 2 years ago I would call it a compromise budget, where sort of in the end they said, what could we do to help you vote for the budget? This time, I think, as you saw, we had a much more proactive process. A lot of the stuff that we proposed in our budget got incorporated into the final product. So it was a much easier sell for my caucus members that our priorities were put in there. I think the sticking point for a lot of people that voted no were things that were put in the implementer. But overall, I think it had broad support. Yeah, I think that's an important amendment. I think at some point, the Democrats need to come to reckoning with our education system. Far too often, we are seeing the unions driving the decision-making. And I think that charter school amendment is an example of that. I also think the removal of the Opportunity Scholarship Program that we had in that budget for our underprivileged children to be able to get scholarships to go to schools, unfortunately was frustrated by our teacher unions. They were calling it a neo-voucher program. That to me was disappointing, and it's something that we need to reconcile because we are having extremely low-performing children in our cities, and we put a lot of money in education. The Republicans supported the funding of ECS to unprecedented levels, and we need to start holding these unions accountable and making sure that the money actually goes to improving the children's lives and their teaching environments.
Why was the money taken out of the budget for capital prep despite the whole approval process?
I'm not sure why the capital prep money was removed. I wasn't familiar with that particular line item.
And also the speaker said just moments ago that despite the challenges with the guardrails, and they would have liked to have spent more money on many things, it did help them work within their framework, and going forward it will help avoid peaks and valleys. Agree?
Yeah, no question. I mean, that was the whole point of the volatility cap. I spoke to a little bit last night, but we can't be lost on the fact that volatility cap does not create a slush fund. It insulates us from over budgeting and over anticipating our revenue and spending too much. So what it is doing is it's smoothing out our revenue. So when you see a huge revenue loss like we saw this year to the tune of $500 million, it doesn't impact the bottom line on the budget. That cap is working exactly the way we wanted it to work. We need to keep reminding the Democrats why it's there, and that's why that framework is so important.
Would you call this a productive session?
Yeah, I would. I think that the budget overall is a productive budget. It put priorities where it's needed. And I think that also put reforms in place. We have to look at living within our means. 2 years from now, it's going to be a different story. I can guarantee it. And we've got to look at transportation spending, higher education spending, and make those more efficient for the residents. Otherwise, we're going to be looking at more revenue, which doesn't make sense.
How do you think, legislatively speaking, in terms of legislative bills, how has it been a productive and successful session for House Republicans?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to say everyone talks about how the last 3 days the Republicans run the building. But I will say that my caucus has been engaged from day one, and our ranking members took the tone of, we are not just going to try to kill bills at the end of session. We're going to engage in this process. And I think you saw it on the floor all session long, not just with the budget, but with other priorities, whether it be education, whether it be general law, whether it be commerce. So there's been a high level of Republican participation. I think this chamber, under the Speaker's leadership, has operated much more productively. So while you saw Republicans voting against certain proposals, by and large, I think we did a lot of good things for the state of Connecticut.
What would you consider some of the big wins for your caucus?
Well, I mean, if you point to the budget, I think aside from the nonprofit funding, the education funding, and the fiscal reforms, for higher ed, getting those reporting, we were able to put in a fund for fallen police officers, so families are supported if our officers are killed in line of duty. That was an important initiative of ours. We have seen some of the education reforms that were put in place. The healthcare reforms. I mean, there's a lot of small bills, social worker reforms that were put in place for licensing. We saw reforms to the marijuana that we were pleased with, trying to get the cannabis regulations under control to protect our youth. When it comes to juvenile justice, I think it fell a little bit short, but we did see some improvement with domestic violence. More money is put in for GPS monitoring. So we're trying to move that goalpost for the state of Connecticut. So I think there are a lot of success stories that we're going to look back on, and certainly Thursday will line that up. Thank you.
What is the next big bills that you see that people should be keeping an eye on?
Well, I think SB 1 and SB 5 are two of the big bills that may be called in the House today. I think they're both being worked on. And there's a public health bill, 6669, that had some provisions in the implementer that were removed last night dealing with pharmaceutical reps. So I think those three areas might be discussed today. And then I think we'll see a lot of smaller initiatives that might crop up.
Thank you.
How would you describe just the negotiations that were happening once you were on the floor last night after 11 and 11?
Yeah, as I said, the budget implementer, when you get that budget, no matter how long I've been here, it's like jumping into cold water. The water hits your body, and after a while, you start getting used to the temperature, and you warm up to it a little bit. And so, that's sort of how the process started. The minute we got that implementer, it was sort of a hell no. And as we discussed some of the provisions, we came to understand them. We were able to get some of those things removed, or some, fixed. So it was certainly a back and forth process, that unfortunately delayed the vote later into the night.